Everyone, welcome to day 3 of PCA's Career Exploration event. Today we are honored to have 3 speakers with us who are Ms. Natalie David, Ms. Lee, and Dr. Sun. So, Career Exploration event. Today we are honored to have 3 speakers with us who are Ms. Natalie David, Ms. Lee, and Dr. Sun. So thank you all so much for taking time out of your day to being here, and we hope our participants can enjoy this experience. Another thing is that I would like to let everyone know that this meeting is recorded, and this recording will be available on YouTube after this ends. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that our speeches will go 15 to 20 minutes. The speaker will talk, and then there's going to be like a Q&A thing at the end of each speaker. So if everyone could just hold their questions to the end, that would be great. And now I will hand it over to, I think, Iris, who will be introducing our first speaker.
Okay, so first up, we have Natalie David, who graduated from the University of Pennsylvania and has been a veterinarian for 7 years. She is now working full-time at Emancipet in Philadelphia. Please welcome Dr. David.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, cool. Hi, so like Iris said, I'm Dr. Natalie David. I'm a veterinarian. I've been a veterinarian for 7 years now, so I'm 34. I grew up in Pittsburgh and lived there for the first kind of 2 decades of my life, and then I've been in Philadelphia pretty much since then. So right now I live and work in Philly. My current job, I figured I'd tell you about my current job a little bit and then backtrack to what led me here. My current job is a place called Emancipet, which is a nonprofit clinic, and we work on offering services to the community for wellness care and spay and neuter for dogs and cats, especially for folks that may not be able to afford a regular kind of traditional veterinarian. And so we do 2 main things. So I have kind of 2 typical days. On a clinic day, basically what I do is come in and I'm available to see clients, and we're all walk-in, and so they will come in anytime in between 10 to 6, get put on a wait list, and then I will see their animals and take care of them. And it's usually very fast-paced, lots and lots and lots of dogs and cats that I see throughout the day, lots of people that I talk to. And basically we're mostly doing wellness things, so preventative care, vaccines, wellness exams, but we're also seeing some animals that are sick with some minor illnesses that we can handle within our clinic, or if there's something that needs a higher level of care that I don't have the right machines for or the right type of staff for, then I help them get to a place that they can actually have that service provided for them. So lots and lots of talking to people. I think a lot of people become veterinarians because they love animals, which is important, but you also really, really have to love people because animals come attached to people. And I really do like people, and I like talking to people. And so on a clinic day, I'll get to meet anywhere from maybe 50 to 100 people in any given day, as well as all of their little furry friends. So I'm basically sort of going in and out between examining the animal, doing whatever services it needs, and then going out and talking to the parent about what we did, answering their questions, and then kind of jumping right back into the next one. So it's a very fast-paced kind of situation. And then my other half of the week, I'm doing surgery. And so we do what's called high quality, high volume spay neuter surgery, which is just basically a fancy way to say we spay and neuter a lot of animals really, really fast, and we try to do a really, really good job. And we try to be very efficient, both in materials and costs, as well as time and how we kind of structure the whole day. And it's basically an idea of specialization, that if we do one thing and we do it really, really well, and we kind of don't do anything else, that we can be very, very efficient and help a lot of people. And so we can do it at a very low cost compared to what a typical practice might be able to do, and therefore be more available to the community. And so if I'm having a day in surgery, I'll usually do between 30 and 35 surgeries. I have 3 staff members helping me, and we do everything beginning from end. So getting the animals checked in, I'll do a physical exam, listen to their heart and lungs, make sure they're healthy for surgery. Then my wonderful, wonderful nurses will put them under anesthesia. I'm basically there to help and troubleshoot if they're having any issues as far as the anesthesia is concerned. But my main job is to basically, I have 2 surgery tables and I stand at the table and they bring me animals and I do surgery on them. And their goal is basically for me to never have a moment to stand still, so that I'm doing surgeries consistently back to back to back to back for about 5 to 6 hours to get all those animals done in a good amount of time. So again, it's crazy. It's a lot of work physically and mentally. It's a lot of focus, especially on the surgery days, but we're able to get a whole lot of stuff done and help a whole lot of people and a lot of animals. So that's kind of what's happening on a typical day. And I figured I would tell you guys about a couple cases that we saw recently that kind of might give you an idea of what we're trying to accomplish. So this past week, we were contacted by another vet in the community who's a good partner of ours, and they said, hey, we have this dog with a pyometra. A pyometra is a life-threatening infection of the lining of the uterus, of the endometrium. And it's something that requires an emergency hysterectomy if the animal is to survive. And unfortunately, that can be super expensive, especially if it's done on an emergency basis. And so they contacted us and said, hey, this person needs this surgery, but they can't afford our price here. Could they come to you? And we said, of course. So this little 14-year-old dog named Sugar came in, and she was a little bit of a mess. She was dealing with this infection. She was also very dehydrated and sort of debilitated from everything. And so we worked her into our day. So we're still doing all our other surgeries, but we got her a bunch of fluids, bunch of IV antibiotics, got her a little bit more stable, got her under anesthesia, did the life-saving surgery, so removed all of that infected tissue, and she did awesome. And it's pretty cool because normally, waking up from surgery is not always the greatest experience, especially because the animals, they don't understand what's going on, where they're at, why does my belly hurt all of a sudden? But it's pretty cool when these animals are so sick that even though they've just had surgery, they feel better right away. And so she woke up and she felt so much better. You could just see it in her face. And then to be able to go out and tell her people like, hey, we saved her life. She did really, really well. When I was looking at her uterus in the actual surgery, the way it looked, it had already started to burst. And so if she had not had that surgery, she would have died probably in a matter of days. And so it was really cool to be able to do that. And she's doing really well post-op. So that was Miss Sugar. And then another little baby we helped recently, a woman came in the clinic that she had found 3 little baby kittens, too young really to be away from their mom, but the mom had lost them. And, basically no one knew where the mom was. And so they were quite sick. They had respiratory infections, they had eye infections, they were very skinny, had parasites, just really not in good shape. And each of the kittens was taken by one of my coworkers and kind of nursed back to health. And we had them on antibiotics, we had them on eye meds, and treated all their parasites, and they are all doing fantastic. And 2 of my coworkers kept them, and my one coworker found another home for the baby. And so I spayed her this past week and she went to her home. So it's really cool when we get to see these little stories, and these are just one of hundreds and hundreds of animals that we're dealing with in any given week. So that's sort of an example of the good things about this job. And it's very split. I think it has, the good things are really good and the bad things are really bad. The good things, getting to help, going into a situation that is really scary for the person and the animal, and having the right kind of knowledge and having the backing of an organization that will let me help for something that people can afford is amazing. And it's such a privilege to be able to help people like that. And even if it's something more routine, just talking to people and hearing all the little stories about the funny things their animals do at home, and everybody's animals a little different, and everybody has different stories, and just seeing their bond with these animals. I had a lady fairly recently tell me that she had COVID and the cat had saved her cat had saved her life. And I sort of thought she meant metaphorically, like in having to go through this long recovery process. But what happened was she got sick with COVID, but she didn't have enough oxygen to her brain to know that she was sick. And her cat, who's usually very gentle and sweet, bit her really badly. And so she had to go to the ER. And at the ER, they were like, okay, you have this cat bite, but also you're about to die of COVID. And so she lived. And so and she attributes it to her lovely cat biting her. And so you just get to hear all these little stories, all these little snippets of people's lives. Some of them are really cool, some of them are really sad. But it's really cool to be able to be a little tiny part of that and to help people. And personally, I also really like the problem solving aspect. I love figuring out puzzles, trying to find out what's wrong, trying to find better ways to do things. And I love the surgery. I think that sounds kind of morbid, but it's very satisfying. It's very interesting. It's always different. There's a veterinarian who was famous for writing a bunch of books about being a farm animal vet in the 40s called James Herriot. And he said this thing that was basically, some days you're going to have the best day and you're going to be a hero. And some days you're going to look like an absolute idiot. And the only thing that is for certain is that you'll never get bored. And I think that's a good way of putting it, because you really will never get bored. The sad things, it's a lot of life and death. It's a lot of stress. And even I think as a student, as a vet student, I didn't quite get that. Like, you don't quite get it until you do it. But just knowing like, if I mess up, something's going to die. And that's true every single day. And so even if I'm having a bad day, or I'm sick, or I'm going through a breakup, or, have something else on my mind, I still have to be there 100%. I can't phone it in. And that's really hard to maintain, like, day after day and year after year, just that weight, and going home and thinking like, did I do that the way I should have? Like, is that animal going to be okay? Did I explain to the owner properly? Did they understand? Did they feel like I cared about them? Did they feel like I judged them? Like, did I help them make the right decision? It's a lot of responsibility, and it's not something I think people always think of. They think like, I want to help. And yeah, it's going to be really hard when animals are sick and when you have to euthanize animals, and that is hard. But I think for me, the hardest thing is just that level of responsibility of life and death, and feeling like I have to be able to make all these decisions, and kind of the buck stops with me. Like, if something's bleeding or something's not breathing, I'm the person that they're going to call, and I have to be the adult in the room. And it was such a realization the first time when I was like, I'm the adult? Me? You sure? Okay. And so it's a lot, and you never really feel like 100% ready for it. And I think the other thing that for me personally is really hard is seeing situations that I can't help with. There are lots of animals that I can't help because my clinic doesn't have the right type of emergency equipment or emergency care that animal would need to survive, and that I know that owner can't afford to go somewhere that does have that stuff. And so it's really hard to see a situation that's really sad, and to know that I know how to help, in a sense, like mentally I have the right skills and physically I have the right skills, but because of logistics and life and reality and poverty, like, I can't always help. And that's really hard, because I'm very much like a fixer, and I want to fix things, and it's great when I can, but when I can't, it kills me. So it's not an easy job. It's never a job that you just sort of go to work and you're like, la-di-da, and you have an easy day and you come home. But it's rewarding. Like, never for a second do I feel like I'm not making a difference. Like, I always know that I'm doing something that helps. And I think that is a big part of like what keeps people going in the field. So how did I get here? You will hear a lot of people that pretty much were, emerged from their mother's womb with their vet school application in hand, and that they really wanted to be vets, and that's all they ever wanted ever since the first breath that they took. And I was definitely not that person. I thought about a lot of different things throughout the years. And I had a hard time figuring it out. And I was about halfway through college, and I had thought about going to medical school for people. And I was working in a hospital, and I liked it, but I felt like the system was so big and so kind of disconnected that I wasn't going to have the hands-on with my patients that I felt like I wanted. I thought about going into environmental research, because I still do really love plants and the environment and native plants and everything like that. But I wasn't 100% sure how to get there. So I was halfway through college, and I was an environmental studies major at Pitt. And part of that degree requirement was I had to do an internship at an environmental organization. And I just so happened to almost randomly pick The Western Pennsylvania Wildlife Center, which is out in Verona, PA, it's now part of, or it was part of what is now called Humane Animal Rescue. And it's a nonprofit that takes care of wildlife that have been injured, you know, by cars or windows, usually some type of a contact with human world, and to try to fix those animals up while keeping them wild, and then release them back to the wild. So I just sort of randomly applied there, and I went in, and within a couple of weeks, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. How could you not have figured this out before, Natalie? And so, because I wasn't that person that had known all along what I wanted, I had to kind of wreak havoc on my college schedule to make sure I could graduate on time, because I couldn't afford to do any, you know, extra semesters. And to go to vet school, there's a bunch of classes you have to take in college and take and pass and do well, and to kind of prepare yourself. So there's a bunch of prerequisites. And so I sort of wreaked havoc with my whole schedule. But I was able to graduate on time, and I applied to vet school, and I got in on my first try, which was lucky and definitely not always something that happens. And then I went to University of Pennsylvania for 4 years, which is how long vet school takes. You do about 2.5 years in the classroom, where it's lectures and labs and taking tests and writing papers, and it's not super different from college other than the subject matter. And then the last 1.5 years was clinics. And so it was broken up into 2-week blocks, where every 2 weeks you would go either to a different department within the hospital, or you would go to a different practice on the outside to see all the different things that vets can do and learn about all the different kinds of animals. And then once I graduated, I got a job at a private practice out in Monongahela, PA, worked there for a little bit. And then I've worked since then at a few different places. Most of them have been nonprofits, so community medical centers like this, or animal shelters, or a lot of organizations do kind of both. And yes, that kind of brought me back here. So there's lots and lots of other things that vets can do besides what I did. I think it's a cool thing in this field that you can sort of pick and choose. You can work on large animals, you can work on horses, you can work on lab animals, you can work on snakes and reptiles, you can work on wildlife, you can go work at SeaWorld if you're really good and you know a lot of people. So there's so much variety. You can become a specialist and do, you know, back surgery and brain surgery all day, or you can be like me and kind of stay in the trenches and do a little bit of a lot of different things and kind of be a jack of all trades. And then there's lots of other related things. You can be a veterinary technician, where you're basically like a nurse for animals. You can manage a practice. You can be a receptionist that kind of runs the whole front of the hospital. And then there's so many things outside of just medical that you can do with animals. So I think a lot of times people are like, I love animals, so I want to be a veterinarian. And that's not wrong, but it has to be, I love animals and I love people, and I can deal with the responsibility and the stress, and I like solving problems, so I want to be a veterinarian. So there are lots of other things that, if some of those other things don't apply, you can still work with animals. You can do training and behavior type stuff. You can be a groomer, you can be pet sitter, dog walker type of person. You can work in labs, you can do research on wildlife. There's so many different, you can work in an animal shelter and manage all the different things that go on there. So there's a lot of things that you can do. I could go on forever about this apparently, but I want to see what questions you guys have, and I will do my best to answer them. Iris, do you want people to just unmute and ask questions, or do you want to have them type?
Either is fine. So yeah, you can either raise your hand and unmute or type in the chat if you have any questions.
Have you ever been called in for like a surgery and like at like 2 a.m. or something, like in the middle of the night?
Yeah, mostly in school. That happens a lot in school because most vet schools have a 24-hour hospital attached. And so the way I met my current boss is we were both called in to anesthetize the same case, which was a dog that needed to have a CT scan and then go have a back surgery on an emergency basis. So it's a great networking opportunity at 2 a.m. But yes, I have had that happen. I also have spent a lot of time on call at jobs that are mostly for during the day. My job before this one, I was at an animal shelter. And so I was on call for all the animals that lived at the shelter. And so if one of them had an emergency of pretty much any kind, I would get called and either advise the nurses over the phone if it was something simpler, or I would actually drive over if it was like a procedure that needed anesthesia or something, then I would drive over and do it myself. Thankfully, my current job does not have a lot of call, and it's a couple weeks out of the year because it's shared between a whole bunch of different doctors, and it's just talking on the phone. And so if something major is going on, you can send the client to the ER. You don't have to physically go in yourself. And this is definitely a much better quality of life than the sort of being on call all the time because you can never quite relax. All right, I have a question from Emma that says, what undergrad classes did you take? That's a good question. So like I said, I was an environmental studies major at Pitt. And so I took all of the graduation requirements for that, which was a lot of geology and environmental science and policy and things like that. Every vet school has slightly different prerequisites that they require. For Penn, I had to take Bio 1 and 2, Chem 1 and 2, Organic Chem. I think I just had to take one of those, Physics 1 and 2. And I think there were a couple other more broad ones. I think I had to take calculus and stats and a writing class or something like that. And it depends on the school. Like a lot of them want you to take some more higher level bio classes. So things like genetics, animal science, that kind of thing. It's a little bit frustrating because they're all different. And that was part of why I just applied to one school the first year, is because due to my taking a while to figure things out, I wouldn't have been able to fulfill the right prerequisites for all the schools on that round. So that was my backup plan, that if I didn't get in that year, that I was going to take some additional classes after I graduated from undergrad to kind of broaden my possibilities. A lot of people are bio majors or animal science majors. I would say that's the most common thing, but you can major in anything and they don't care all that much what your major is. Sometimes they even find it interesting to have some other things in your background, so you're a little bit more of a well-rounded person. As long as you get those prerequisites, it doesn't really matter what the actual major is. Anything else you guys want to know? All right, this is from YW. It says, do you need special training for different animals? Yes and no. So my license, which is through the state of Pennsylvania, and actually I also have a license in New Jersey, allows me to work on any animal that is not a human. That said, most people, there's just too much information that most people aren't able to work on all the different species at once. And so when you go through school, you learn a lot about dogs and cats, you learn a lot about horses and cows, and a little bit about pigs and chickens and goats and bunnies. And then everything else is sort of, you have to seek it out and take electives or do stuff during the summer. If you want to learn about, if you really want to know about snakes, you have to kind of go out of your way to find that stuff, because there's just so many species. And certain things are the same, like the process of working through a case, figuring out what the problem is, figuring out how to treat it. There are certain things that are the same, but then there's a lot of details where, dogs can take Tylenol, cats will die if they look at Tylenol funny. Dogs can take amoxicillin, rabbits will die if they get amoxicillin. So there's lots of little nuances. And so most people are going to pick several species that they want to work on and focus their school training and then their after school training on that. And so some people will do an internship and a residency like they do in human medicine, and that lets you specialize down a lot more if there's something really specific or a species that you want to work on. You can also go, we're required to take continuing education every year. So if I decided, oh, you know, I really would like to start doing some work on goats, I could go take some continuing education about goats and kind of refresh my memory about that stuff. And Chelsea says, do you only help cats and dogs or also help other animals like lizards and fish? Me personally, I just do cats and dogs and sometimes bunnies, depending on the job. But like I said, there are vets that do all of the above. I have a classmate who was a world-renowned fish vet and fish surgeon, and he worked at the National Aquarium in Baltimore, and now he works in Hong Kong, and he does everything that I can do for a dog or a cat. He can do that for a fish, which is pretty sweet. Y says, is the job dangerous as the animals might have infectious disease and bite you? Yes, I would say yes. And it's actually up there on the list of dangerous careers. I think the most dangerous is people that work with large animals like horses, because if a horse kicks you in the head, like it might just kill you. Dogs and cats, bites are definitely an issue. Weirdly, cat bites are actually more dangerous than dog bites most of the time, because even though a dog does more damage to your actual tissue, a cat has really nasty bacteria in their mouths, and they have these little tiny teeth that put the bacteria deep down, and then a lot of time the skin heals over. And so then you are having this bacteria that's really nasty trapped under your skin. And so you can lose an arm, you can die of sepsis from a cat bite. And then yes, infectious diseases, everything from things like rabies and really scary things like that, all the way down to, you know, fleas and scabies and worms. A lot of those can transfer to people. A lot of GI and respiratory infections can transfer to people. And depending on the species you're working with, you know, there are different things. But yeah, zoonotic disease, which is disease that goes from animals into people, is definitely always a concern and something we have to keep in mind when we're doing different procedures and stuff. And Emma says, is grad school technically more important and valuable than undergrad in the veterinary training process? So grad school, as in veterinary school, that's the part that you absolutely have to have. And that's the part that's really specialized. There are plenty of people that will go to grad school and get, say, a master's after they go to undergrad, because they want to know something specific, like they might want to be going into, say, public health, and they want that aspect, or they want a business degree first. I would say vet school, basically, the big things they care about are, one, that you've taken the prerequisites and done well in them, because not that those classes necessarily are exactly what vet med is about, but it kind of shows that your brain works in the ways that will hopefully help you understand vet med. They want to see you have experience in the field, whether that's volunteering or shadowing or working in a vet clinic, because they want to make sure that you know what you're getting into. And then you have to take the GRE, which is kind of a really random requirement, but yeah, you have to randomly take the GRE. So I would say, if you go into undergrad knowing what you want to do, there's not any major reason why you would need to go to grad school in between undergrad and vet school, unless there was something specific you wanted to learn. And then sometimes people say they struggled a little bit in undergrad, and you know, their total GPA wasn't maybe quite competitive enough for vet school. Sometimes they'll do a master's degree to show, like, yes, I can totally handle grad level work, and now I can kind of prove it. Or they'll do what's called a post-bac, which, say I didn't figure it out until after I went to vet school, or say I wanted to take more difficult science classes than I'd taken in undergrad. You can do a post-bac, and that is just basically a bunch of higher level science classes to prepare you and to hopefully be able to sort of show that I have the right types of skills for this. Yes, you can totally take classes that aren't vet med related. And I would encourage people to, both because you may figure out that you want to do something else, which is totally cool, but also you need other things that you're interested in to keep you sane. Like you need to have hobbies and interests that have nothing to do with it so that your brain doesn't explode. And so, yes, I in undergrad, I took a piano class, I took a Japanese art history class, I took a theater class. So you totally have time, and you totally should take things that are unrelated. And it is good for you. It is good for your application. The only class my vet school interviewer asked me about was my metalwork class, because he was curious, because, you know, he knows what's in a bio class. He doesn't know what's in a metalwork class. And so it makes you a better person, more interesting person. And some of the skills weirdly transfer over in ways that you wouldn't always imagine.
Okay, so do we have any more questions? Okay, thank you so much for coming to speak today. This was a great insight to the veterinarian career. We are now waiting for our next speaker, so everyone please wait a moment and wait till they come.
All right, and thank you guys so much, and Iris, for setting this up and getting me connected, and thank you all for listening to me on a Saturday afternoon in June. And good luck with everything that you want to work on. And if you have more questions, I'll make sure Iris has my email if anyone thinks of more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, hello everyone. I think our second speaker is running a little late, so we're gonna just introduce our cardiologist, which is supposed to be a third speaker for today, but he'll be speaking now. So Dr. Shuang Li is currently a cardiologist at UPMC, and he obtained his medical degree from Peking University Health and Science Center. Prior to joining UPMC, he was with Harvard Medical School, and it is our great pleasure to have Dr. Shuang as our guest speaker today. So let's all give him a warm welcome.
Thank you, Yifei. That's really my great pleasure to be here, and I'm so glad to see so many friends in high school here and join this event. And I really want to thank PCA Youth Center to have this organization and for this event. And I still remember when I was in high school, you know, facing the uncertainty of the future and all the career selections, you know, how eager I would like to have to, you know, to listen to others to get an idea what different careers could be. And I think this is really good opportunity to all of us to sit down and discuss what different careers, and really good opportunity. Yes. Again, so as Yifei just said, I'm a cardiologist. So I'm working in the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center as a cardiologist, and I'm also a researcher and working on a very specific rare but deadly disease called pulmonary hypertension, is high blood pressure in the lungs. But today, because I think the most audience are like high school students or middle school students, I would like to give you some basic idea of, the career as cardiologist. What could that be? And some major questions you may have about this career. So I do have a few slides I want to share, but I don't think I'm the host. I just wonder if I can be a host to share my screen.
Chenny, you have host right now, so can you give co-host?
Yeah, hold on. It should work now.
Oh, good. Thank you. All right. I hope you all can see my screen. And so the title will be like working on heart, just to give you some introduction as of a career as a cardiologist. So the most common question I get from my, the friends from our neighbors, or, most of them are from high school. So what is cardiologist? So cardiologist is sometimes most commonly we say cardiologist is a heart doctor. So just like the doctor for stomach, doctor for your brain, doctor for your lungs. So the cardiologist is pretty much a doctor for your heart. So cardiologist is specialized in taking care of patients with heart and blood vessel disease. Some of these diseases could be common, like, a lot of people may have high blood pressure, or they may have like heart disease, coronary artery disease, or heart attack, or stroke. But sometimes we are dealing with some rare disease, like the disease I just mentioned, pulmonary arterial hypertension is a high blood pressure in the lungs. And so it happened very early, and people may die quickly. So, but it's really rare. And so, the cardiologist is pretty much specialized on this kind of things, taking care of these patients. And where do we work? So usually we work in the hospitals, but some of the cardiologists, they could also work in the clinics, in different settings. So in hospitals, I think most of you guys may have the experience in the clinics, talking to the doctors, but some of them may have experience staying in hospital for a few nights and seeing all the patient care team, and including sometimes you may have encounter with the heart doctors, right? And what our work, the major work will be make a diagnosis on the disease, to tell the patients what disease you have, and we may give them medications and to treat this disease for long-term or short-term. And some of us will also perform some procedures. These procedures could be to make the diagnosis, or some procedures are for therapies, to treat the patients. And as a cardiologist, is really a specialist. So most of us could want to do some research. So this research could be clinical research, working on, the patient's population to study how, why they have the disease, how to treat them, and try the new methods or new technologies. And the cardiologist is also have some duties to do the education, either train the residents or fellows. They are learning how to become a doctor, or we also have some duties to do the education for general population, how to maintain a healthy lifestyle to avoid the disease happening. Yeah, so that's pretty much what cardiologists can do in general basis. And another common question I got from my friends is, what what our daily life look like. Like, what do you do every day? So, of course, we are doctors. We're taking care of the patients. So, just like we go to see the patients either in the clinic, the exam room, or in the wards, and they shake hands and say how are you doing and how are you feeling today, so something like that. And we give them, we talk to them, telling them how to take the medicines, how to change the lifestyle, how to monitor all the blood pressures, heart rate, all this kind of stuff. So that's the the major work we're doing in everyday basis. And we, as a cardiologist, we usually work as a team. It's not that uncommon. We need the multiple people involved in a primary team taking care of the patients. So, if I'm in the inpatient service, actually 100% time I'm doing inpatient service. So I come to the hospital and have the patients list. Sometimes it's 20 or 30 patients, and I will quickly go through them, and I will go to the conference room meeting with my team. So this team includes several residents. It's like a resident physician, the doctor in training, and maybe some fellows and some physician assistant or social workers, nurse practitioners. So this big team. So we can sit down and discuss all the patients together, and then we will go to see the patients together and talk to patients at the same time. We will discuss the cases to make the decisions. And so as a cardiologist, as attending, when you start the practice, you will be a leader in this team. So you will organize all the duties in the different team members, and you will make the final decision for everybody to treat patients. And you have to be a collaborator. That means you need to find help when you need. Like I need to find somebody can do like a coronary stenting. They put a stent in the coronary arteries. I need to find people dealing with irregular heartbeats. We call EP cardiologists. And some people may have expertise in brain, in blood pressure control, even the pharmacist. So we need to collaborate with all of them to make the good care for the patients. And also, cardiologists, as I said, have some duties for teaching and education. So you need to be a teacher. Usually we have like teaching courses almost every day to teach medical students or residents, and some advanced knowledge and updates of the guidelines. So that's some of the work we need to do. And also we need to work as a researcher. That means we need to work on the new technologies and to find the better way to treat patients and the new medicines. As I'm doing right now, I spend 75% time actually doing research. It's pure basic research and translational research to find new diagnosis, new mechanisms for like pulmonary arterial hypertension. So that's, but some doctors may prefer to do more clinical duties, like maybe 95% time. But for me, it's just my interest. I want to do a little bit more research on this regard. And after all the patient care, teaching and research, some of cardiologists may do some, it's more like operator, can need to do some procedures or surgeries. It's probably not the big surgeries, but it's put the catheter into the heart and put the stent in the coronary arteries, blood vessels, or do the measurement. So that those procedures also take some times in our daily work. So another common question is how to become a cardiologist. So I think for this question, to answer this question, I better just start with my pathway. So my route is like this. I graduated from high school. It was in China, and I entered medical school in Beijing. So you may know that in China, the medical school is undergraduate education, and but that medical school took me 7 years. So I got a bachelor degree of medicine, which was equivalent to MD here, and another 2 years to get a master degree. And so the 7 years, then I started my first residency that was in Beijing. In China, the internal medicine residency took 5 years, and then you became a physician. You can practice as attending. But as I said, I want to do some research, so I want to get some basic research experience. That's why I came to the U.S. So after I got the license to practice medicine in China, so I spent several years in California, University of California, to do research, as a research fellow, and then I decided to get back to the clinical practice track. So for that, in US, I have to redo the license exam and took my second residency, which was in Mount Auburn Hospital in Cambridge, Boston, which is a teaching hospital of Harvard Medical School. So in US, the internal medicine residency took 3 years. And after that, I got matched to University of Pittsburgh Medical Center as general cardiology fellow, taking another 3 years and to become a cardiologist. If you look at this pathway, it took me about 20 years to get there. So a lot of training. But for you guys, my friends in US, as high school students, very likely you will take a little bit different route here. So you're now in high school, and if you really want to become a doctor, you need to take a pre-med, it's undergraduate studies in college. It's usually like 2 or 3 years, is my understanding, because I was not in this pathway by myself, but I heard from my trainees that that's pretty much what they do. And then you can get into medical school, which is a graduate education, and 4 years, MS1 to MS4. Then you can get matched to residency. For internal medicine residency, again, it will take about 3 years. And if you want to be a cardiologist, you have a specialty training, you need to apply for cardiology fellowship. It will take about 3 years for general cardiology fellowship, and take another 1 or 2 years for subspecialty like interventional or electrophysiology or advanced heart failure, something like that. And then you will become a cardiologist. My calculation here is, if you really want to go this pathway, it will take about 12 years at least to get into this track to become a practicing cardiologist. So so I think the impression, if you look at this pathways, is to take a long time. 12 years or 20 years, a lot of training, a lot of steps. So that's pretty much the general pathway. So you may ask, what do I like to be a cardiologist or not, or dislike to be a cardiologist? Because just like all the careers, to be a cardiologist, there is pros, there's cons, but for different people, different cardiologists, different doctors, they may feel different regarding the pros and cons. But to me, I just want to tell you what I feel about this career. So the pros, the first one is, you're helping people directly. Pretty much you're saving their lives. So, for most of people, if they can help the people on a daily basis, they save their lives, it's really rewarding and satisfying. So that's why, some people feel really good to be a doctor, because it's always helpful. And again, you will be facing a very challenging career. So it's, as I said, you need a long training to get all the skills, all the knowledge, and after you start practicing, it's not the end. You have to continue the learning, the training to get knowledge of the updated guidelines and all the skills. So you will never feel bored. So that's pretty much the lifelong learning process. It's really challenging career, and some people really enjoy that. But I know some people doesn't want to live a challenging life, but that's a different story. But for me, it's the challenging career is really, really good. And I just mentioned, so the good thing is the lifetime learning and development. You will keep improving yourself. You will feel, I always have something to learn, and I can be better and better. To be a doctor, to be a researcher, to be an educator, and in heart disease. So that's also satisfying, and some people may very excited about that. And you may have some flexibility in the working styles. So there's so many cardiologists. They may choose different the work style in workplaces. Some people want to work by themselves. They can just have their own clinics. They're just taking care of patients mostly by themselves with the minimal help from nurses or something. But some doctors want to work in the big hospital and with support of the colleagues and all the department. And so and also you may have the collaboration with other researchers and the basic research groups. And you may have, that's another situation. You can also decide how long you work. Pretty much, most of doctors, they got paid by hours. If you want to work, you want to spend more time with family, you probably say, I don't want to do the weekend calls. And so you just work in the weekdays. So, and sometimes it's flexible, not always for residents or fellows, but when you start practicing, you probably can make that choice. Work longer hours to get more pay, or you get less pay and spend more time with families or something like that. And for me, I choose spend a little bit more time doing research. So then I have to reduce my clinical duties. So right now I do 25% time in hospitals. So that's sometimes it gives you some freedom to decide, how much you want work, and follow your interest. So that's also something I do like to be a cardiologist. And to be a doctor, especially for cardiologists, you may face a very stable job market. So we are facing more and more elderly people. You will see more heart disease, and you always need doctors and cardiologists. So you don't need to worry about jobless, or you just cannot find a job somewhere. And you can get the reasonable salaries. I'm not saying high salary because you spend much longer training, and you have you spend a lot of money in this the whole process. So you may have a higher salary, the payment, but to be honest, to be a cardiologist, to be a doctor is never easiest or fastest way to earn money. So that's the bottom line I want to tell you. Is reasonable. I enjoy it, but it's not very special for other doctors. So then we come to the cons of what I don't like to be a cardiologist. So the major complaint I have is, I think most of the cardiologists may have, is the long training time and expense. So for me, I took over 20 years to get to this station or the cardiologist position. And for your guys, if you go all straightforward to this pathway, you still need to take about, I think maybe 12 years to get to this position. So, and then also you spend a lot of money. Medical school is expensive. I know some of the medical schools, like New York Medical School, will not charge anything. But most of medical schools, 4 years, you still need to spend a lot of money, and you won't learn a lot as a resident or fellows. So, the 10 years, if you start on this pathway, you probably will not earn much money for about 10 years or 12 years. So that's the long training time is kind of pain. And work stress. Heart disease sometimes very challenging, and you probably know that. The patient has heart attack, sudden cardiac death, or stroke. It's like emergency of emergency. You have to do very fast. You need to do CPR. You need to, if you're a doctor, you need to get to the hospital to start, rescue procedures as soon as possible. Sometimes it could give you some stress. I still remember when I was attending, I see crying residents or crying fellows when we lost the patients. The patients, we try our best, but still cannot get them back. They died and give us a lot of stress. That's, you probably have to face that. And as all the doctors, sometimes it's quite hard to balance the work and family life. If you're on call, like me, starting from next Monday, I will be on call for 8 days, pretty much 24 hours for 8 days. So I carry the pager and the cell phone. They need to get me, to make the decision or taking care of the patients, to get advices and consults almost at any time. So in that period of time, it's quite difficult to spend a lot of time with family, and you cannot travel out of the town. So, some people may feel it's not that comfortable. And another thing is some people may feel it's good, but some people may feel it's not that good. So it's lifetime learning required, and you have to learn continuously. So that's pretty much I can feel what I don't like about to be a cardiologist. So, but as I said, to different cardiologists, different people, they may feel different. Yeah, so that's pretty much I want to tell you about my career as a cardiologist, and I'm happy to take any questions from you. And I also leave my email in this slide, and in case you want to ask me more questions and find more help, I'm happy to talk to you. Thank you. All right, I got a question from Lynn. How much can cardiologists make at peak of the career? So I think your question is about the salary or something. Am I right? If that's the case, annual income. Okay, so there is a list of all the income or the general, the salary of all different doctors or different specialists. I think the top one in the past several years, the number one is the bone doctor, is orthopedics, and the second one is cardiologist. I would say it varies a lot. If you work in a big hospital like UPMC, or the big cities like Pittsburgh or New York or Los Angeles, you will not expect you earn too much, because this job market, you have so many doctors there. But if you work in a remote area like Dakota or Wyoming, and you will probably be the only cardiologist in 100 miles, this big area. So you will get much better pay. I would say, if at the peak of the career, in Western Pennsylvania, if I just learned from my co-fellows, we just graduate, we work in the, regular hospital, like 400 to 500 is pretty much regular, the average pay every year. But if you work in the big city like Boston and New York, you may get much less than that, maybe half. And also depends on how many hours you want to spend in patient care. The more hours you spend in hospital, definitely you got more pay. But some doctors may choose less clinical duties and to save some time and got less pay. I hope I answered your question. Again, I want to emphasize that, if you think about the training time, it's so many years and expense all the cost you spent in training, the residency, in the medical school. And again, to be a doctor is not the easiest or fastest way to earn money. So that's my feeling. I mean, you probably can get richer if you do computer science or do business. That's my feeling. Yes, I got a question from Sydney Zhang that want me to share the most of the challenges I ever taken when I was in undergraduate education and 20 years of my training. Yes, that's really a good question. I really want to share. So, in China, the medical education is undergraduate school. So it's, if you say, I'm not quite sure, the undergraduate degree challenging is in medical school or in pre-med. But for me, the most challenging step is to make the decision, what specialty I need to choose. In the undergraduate medical school in China, we're still young. We're only like in 20s, and we see all the we have the clerkship. We see all the medical specialties, what to do, but when you make the decision, you want to be a surgeon, you want to be an internist, you want to be an eye doctor, you probably will stay in that pathway for whole life. So that's a little bit challenging to make the decision. And also, challenging time. Most of the challenging time is to make the transition from the basic classes into clinical work. The first time you start to see the patients, you shake hands with them and chat with them, learn how to write notes and to the presentation. That's also challenging. And in my whole training, for me, maybe a little special because I was a Chinese medical graduate. I have to get familiar with the U.S. medical system. There's still quite a lot of difference, and I have to get to pass the U.S. MLE, that's U.S. medical license exam, that's big exam, and get matched to the residency program. It's quite challenging for international medical graduates. But for you guys, you're probably much easier. So it will be a little bit different. And I got another question from Vi. Can you have enough sleep time when you are on call? Do you need to work on surgeries overnight? Yes. So at this time, when I'm on call, I can do home call. I can stay at home. If they have anything need help, they can just page me, call me. I can just give them consults, advices to make the decision over the phone calls. But when I was a resident or fellows, especially the first year resident or fellow, you could not expect to have enough sleep. So it's like the weekend call is 24 hours. Usually you only have like 1 or 2 hours you can have really good sleep, but it's quite tough. But right now it's better. But if you want to be a cardiologist or a doctor, you need to get prepared. It's quite intense to be a resident or fellows, especially in the first few years. And do you need to work on surgeries overnight? Yes. So that depends on your specialty. General cardiologist, we don't do big surgeries, and some procedures like echocardiogram and ultrasound may need go to the hospital. But if you decide to be an interventional cardiologist, that means you need to treat the heart attack patients, put a stent or put a catheter or tubes into the patient's heart to open the blood vessels. Then when you are on call, you need to go to the hospital anytime. So a lot of heart attack happens at midnight or early morning. So if that happens, you have to, when you got the page, that's the emergency. You'd have to drive to the hospital probably in 15 minutes, 30 minutes at most, because we want to save patient's life, as soon as possible. So that's the thing. When you're on call, you choose to be that type of cardiologist, you will do that. Okay, June has a question. On average, how many hours do you work per week? It also depends. When I am on call, like starting from Monday until July the 5th, so that 8 days, I pretty much work 24 hours every day. So for the whole week. But when I was not on call, I don't need to do that. So I just work as a regular doctor. I can go to the hospital at 8 o'clock and go home at 5. And also, as I mentioned, I am doing a lot of research. So research is more flexible. You can decide if I have work to do, I have animals to treat, I have the meetings, I can, then I go to the lab at the hospital. But if not, I can just do whatever I want. Okay, so SJ asked me a question about the residency and fellowship. So the residency is the training right after your medical school. So you learn all the medical knowledge, but you need to learn how to work as a team and face the patients and how to write notes and to get the bottom line is you need to get a license to practice medicine. So residency is pretty much for that purpose. So for internal medicine residency, it takes 3 years. So residency, some people may ask why we call it residency. So I think the reason for that is probably originally we hope those doctors or residency physicians, they need to stay in the hospital almost every day. But at this time, we don't expect they work over, I think maybe 18 hours a day. So there's a limit. So we won't let them work overtime. So give them some time to sleep. But the first year of residency, we call it intern. You just learn from the senior resident or attendings, and dealing with patient care. So you see maybe 10 patients, 5 to 10 patients, inpatients every day, and you write all the notes, do the presentation, discuss the cases, and learn how to get the skills or knowledge for your future career. But the second year you will be residents, so you will lead a team of interns or residents. The third year you do even better. So the 3 years you give you step-by-step training to get all the required skills and knowledge to become a true doctor. So with the residency, we hope you have all the training to pass the doctor's license, so you can practice by yourself. So difference of residency and fellowship is just like different steps. The residency, we have several major residency, like internal medicine residency or surgery residency. For the fellowship, it's more specialized. Like internal medicine, you may want to be a heart doctor, you take the cardiology fellowship. You want to be a lung doctor, you will take a pulmonology fellowship. So that's a difference. The fellowship may take different, variable years. Cardiology fellowship take 3 years. Some others may only take 1 or 2 years. So that's pretty much the next step of training to be a specialist.
All right, are there any more questions you guys have? If not, I believe Edward is concluding today. Let's see.
All right, thank you so much. Again,
All right.
sorry, I left my email on the slide. So if you want to talk to me and you want to get some experience in hospital, and I think the best thing is you have some ideas to develop some interest to be a doctor before you make the decision. So in that case, you definitely let me know and we can chat the possibilities. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks to all the speakers, and also just if you guys have any questions, you can also just ask the speakers like they said. And also thanks you all for participating in this event.
All right, actually, before you guys leave, unfortunately, one of our speakers, we had a little miscommunication in time with them. The UX designer that was supposed to speak and be our second speaker, unfortunately, is on the other side of the country. So we had a miscommunication with time. She will be speaking at 5:30 today, and I believe it'll be the same room. So if you want to listen, you can join at 5:30. Her experience will also be recorded later, so we'll give that to you if you can't make it. Thanks again for attending, everyone. So let's get started. We have one speaker today. In case you haven't been to any of the previous career exploration events, we have 20 minutes for speaking and then typically 10 minutes for questions. So today it'll be around 30 minutes for this event. So right now we have Miss Li, who will be speaking about her career as a UX designer. She received a master's in human and computer interaction from CMU and a bachelor's of science from Renmin University of China. Please welcome Mrs. Li.
Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry about the scheduling. I totally misunderstood the time, and I live in LA, so that's why I thought it was 2:30 our time. But anyways, I'm so glad for people who can still make it. I'm gonna start presenting my screen and share my career and how I got there as a UX user experience designer at Google. Hopefully you will learn something from it. And yeah, if you got any questions, I'm happy to answer them towards the end, or you can actually interrupt me if you want. Feel free to do that. All right, so let's get started. As I said, I'm currently living in LA. I work at Google. I prepared some slides, and the talk is gonna be arranged in 3 different sections. I'm going to give you a little bit intro about myself and the path of how I got to where I am today. And I will talk a little bit about what is human-computer interaction, basically the major I picked for my master's degree. And then lastly, I will talk about what user experience designers do. Okay, so a little bit about myself. I studied computer science for my undergrad. I'm from China, from Beijing, and I spent my first 22 years there, including my college, basically. And And I'm not sure, I bet you guys don't know much about the college entrance exam and the structure in China, but basically you didn't get much leverage. Well, I guess, anyways, there was only one exam determines what college you could attend. And then by that time, all I wanted was to become a journalist because I just thought it was really cool watching journalists on TV and talking about serious stuff. That was all I wanted to do. But I didn't do very well in that college entrance exam. When I was 18 years old, I still passed the line to enter the college I want, like what I wrote down in my college application. And you could actually just pick one college. So I entered that college, but I was placed to the computer science department. And in high school, actually, I wasn't good at math or physics or anything. And I had no coding experience at all. I'm pretty sure nowadays you probably are already exposed to some kind of coding, but not at all for my case. So I just entered college without nothing about CS. I studied CS for my undergrad. Oddly, I actually enjoyed coding, but I still didn't like math, especially college level mathematics. And I just didn't think that would become my career. I couldn't imagine myself being a software engineer after college, and I was just feeling really lost and confused for a long time during my my first and second year in college. I started doodling a lot, and this is just an old photo of me thinking about a crazy idea, like an umbrella that you could that would give you the shade when you're riding a bike or something. Anyway, a random idea there, but yeah, I doodled a lot and just had a lot of random ideas. I think I was a very creative person at the time. I just didn't know what to do. Okay, so a turning point was during my junior year. I applied for an exchange program, and I got excited. I spent my first semester of my junior year in Stockholm, Sweden, and that was a life-changing experience. I traveled a lot in Europe. Basically, I only signed up for four classes during that semester, and that just gave me a lot of time, and the cheap airlines allowed me to be a backpacker, travel to different countries in Europe. It opened up the world actually I had perceived at that point. It helped me make up my mind that I want to do a master's either in Europe or in the US. And also, I enrolled in 2 grad school level classes in human-computer interaction. That was actually my first time getting exposed to this subject. And all of a sudden, I found I had so much passion there. And it just immediately I thought, oh, that's what I wanted to do. And by that time, I even didn't know that what I would become if I studied that. I just knew the 2 courses I took. One was more about psychology, understanding humans, but not just psychology, also how they would interact with machines and how we would design an experience that would fit better for their daily life and things like that. And the other class was more about multimedia interaction. So we were playing with new programming tools that would really let my creative juice out and design something fun, not like my my C#, C, or Java courses in college. So I had so much fun there. So after I came back to China from Sweden, the rest was pretty straightforward. I applied for grad school in both Europe and the US. I got quite a few admissions, and that's me right there for my college graduation ceremony. And then, yeah, so I got quite a few offers. Some are really good from Europe, but the one I picked was Carnegie Mellon because it really had the best master's program in human-computer interaction. It has the longest history, and has like such a nice alumni network, really great professors. They basically have like the most amount of papers getting admitted to like the biggest HCI conferences. So yeah, looking at all the different criteria, CMU was the school to go. So after college, right after college, I flew to Pittsburgh and studied master's in human-computer interaction at CMU. So that was like a really intense program. It was only 12 months long, but it packed so much into it. So like on its official website, it actually says it's like a 2-year program condensed into one. So we would spend like days and nights working on lots of group projects. The live photo shows we were working on our capstone project, which was like a really big project working with Bank of America at that time. And we were just like, you know, brainstorming design ideas and putting all the Post-it notes on the wall and all that. Yeah, so it was a very intense time. And then I graduated. I'm actually going to talk a little bit more about that experience later on. So yeah, just to give you a brief kind of trajectory first. After that, I became a UX designer at IBM Watson. That was actually also in Pittsburgh. So I stayed in Pittsburgh for 3 more years after my time at CMU. This was my first full-time job. It was down in Squirrel Hill. That was my first professional experience. I had a lot of fun there. And then in 2018, about 3.5 years ago, I made another career move. I moved to California, to the San Francisco Bay Area first, to join Google's headquarters and became a user experience designer there. And then most recently, I moved down to Los Angeles because of family reasons. Yeah, so that was basically an intro about myself and my past. Now, let me talk a little bit about what is human-computer interaction after all. So basically, HCI is the acronym you will see if you start to hear this concept a little bit more. I'm going to say HCI from now on. So basically, HCI is about, it basically literally says that, right? Like a human and a computer and how they interact with each other. What does it mean is it has a few different meanings or applications. First thing is HCI, I guess most people perceive it in this way, is about designing the usable and most friendly user interfaces of our everyday devices. So for example, all the different apps you have on your phone, like TikTok, Snapchat, Google Maps, whatever, or websites, they all are designed by designers. And these designers are not your like fashion designer or industrial designer. These designers are called user experience designers. You should know that the title may change depending on what company you're in. For example, Google, actually, my official title is called interaction designer, and Uber or Snapchat calls it product designer, and some other companies call it UX, user experience designer. But basically, it comes down to the same thing. We design the experiences, the interactions, the UI, the look and feel, the animations, like basically what you see of your everyday apps and websites. But HCI is also more than that. If you attend an HCI program and study that, you're not just going to be designing interfaces, or at least you have the choice not to do that. It's also about exploring new ways of how humans would interact with the world. So I'm not sure if you guys are too young to know what Google Glass is, but it was like quite an innovative project a handful of years ago. Basically, this picture shows like a glass you can wear, and it gives you a lot of information about based on the specific context you're in, or more people may be more familiar with, for example, your Amazon Alexa or Google Home, or even some VR, AR gaming devices. These are like new ways of how we can interact with the world, taking advantage of new technologies, right? Or self-driving cars. So HCI is also studying really what are the new ways of how people can interact with the world with the help of the new technologies we were pushing for year after year. So taking Apple Watch, for example, a lot of people have it now, and just a lot of companies making smartwatches, but it was actually born, for example, 10, 15 years ago by probably an academic paper published by an HCI professor or a PhD student. So academia is always a couple years or 5, 10 years ahead of industry. As people who study HCI invented this kind of the new technologies or new media, new ways of how we interact with things. And then years later, the products are made and it's being used by the general public. So HCI is also about that. And beyond that, some of the HCI researchers also study the relationship between human and technology. What does it mean? They're not necessarily inventing new things, but they are studying and analyzing the why behind it. For example, we all use and we all know Wikipedia, but do you know why people are motivated to really contribute and add things to Wikipedia at all? Because you're not getting paid for adding a new item on Wikipedia, right? So like, what's the motivation there? There are researchers who've been studying that. So this part is also a very interesting part. People are like just learning, why human would do certain things with technology. And there are like just so many subtopics under this. I'm not gonna go into the details, but at least you know it's there. So long story short, HCI covers a very, very broad set of topics. And if you are interested doing like very forward-looking, groundbreaking HCI research, you're probably looking at doing a PhD in HCI in the future. But if you're looking at something more everyday, like designing the UI, the interfaces, the experience, that's immediately applicable in industry, maybe probably a master's in HCI is enough. So I was more interested in doing this kind of work, and that's why I did a master's in HCI. Actually, that was not why, because by that time I didn't really have this level of understanding. It was kind of it was a journey of finding myself and finding what I was passionate about altogether. Yeah, but now you know. But overall, no matter what HCI is about, it all comes down to HCI helps make our experiences better, especially when it's about interacting with technologies. If you're wondering what kind of like the basic subjects or disciplines would be relevant to HCI, I think this is a very good representation. Not 100% accurate, but good enough. So HCI is a very interdisciplinary subject. Basically, it's a little bit of computer science, a little bit of design, and a little bit of psychology. And it makes sense, right? You interact with technology, or users interact with technology, so that's the computer science part. And the psychology part is the human part. We want to understand the motives behind certain behavior. And the design part is the solutioning part. If you understand the technology and the motivation, what are you going to do to bring a better experience? So that's why HCI covers these three subjects. Now a little bit about my my master's of HCI experience at CMU. It was, like I said, it was a 12-month program, a lot of group projects. It was super fun. I met a lot of very smart peers, and we had a very different people actually brought different things to the table. For example, the top left one was I was attending like a Raspberry Pi workshop. and it was my first time using some playing with hardware to design something fun. And then the bottom left was my classmate at the time. Now he's a colleague, also works at Google, but by that time he was really into a lot of very fun stuff. Like, for example, a mind reader that controls a drone. I think that was one of his class projects. And yeah, we shared lab space, lived basically together for that whole year at CMU. I even took a sketching class, got to play with 3D printer, and then I published 3 patents as part of the results. And you've seen this picture before. We work with a real client, Bank of America, and help them solve a real problem, and then put on my resume. That kind of served like a pseudo internship for me, so that I could land down my first job at IBM. Okay, so I want to leave some time for you guys to ask me questions, so I'm gonna speak a little faster if it's okay. Now we're on to the third part, the last part. What do UX designers do? Okay, so after you study the HCI program, master's program, or I should have said that you don't need to really. Today, there are some kind of HCI interaction design related undergrad programs. So it's totally possible, and there are a lot of people who would become a UX designer right after college. A master's degree is not 100% necessary. I would say like about 50% people would do that and become UX designer. It's all your choice, but you don't have to make that choice right now, obviously. Just keep something in mind. If you're so interested and so passionate about product design, UX design already, so maybe in college, your major could be interaction design or digital design, digital media, something around the line to be more relevant. Okay, so yeah, what do UX designers do? Most people who studied a human-computer interaction program or interaction design, some sort of program like that, would become a UX designer. There are also a group of people who would become UX researcher. There's a difference there. UX designers would do more the design part of the triangle. I just showed you that we would come up with solutions of the actual, like the final experience, versus UX researchers would run like user studies and like usability testing to help understand the problem. I'm going to speak more about the UX experience job because that's what I do. Okay, so let's take Google, or I guess like a typical tech company, for example. This is basically a very simplified explanation about what for a tech company, the structure of people, right? So you have very few people who are the top leaders, and then you have your core product team, which is actually the majority of the company, and then you have some marketing people who are responsible for selling the product or customer service, and then you have some other people. For the core product, the 3 most important roles are you have software engineers, you have product managers, and you have the UX people, and that's myself. I think people are more familiar with the first 2. Software engineers make sense. You study computer science or things like that, and you're responsible for coding, for implementing whatever the features and everything of basically the product of your company. And then product managers, they serve like a little small-scale CEOs on different features. They're responsible for understanding the business opportunities, define the product, the feature scope, and making sure everything runs smoothly, making sure things will be shipped on time and things like that. And UX designers, we are very important in this. You can look at these 3 roles also as like a triangle. UX designers are important in the way that we represent users. So it's important for us to like bring the best experience for users, not to make sure the experience won't be sacrificed because of implementation difficulties or because of business requirements and things like that. So that's the basic structure. And a UX designer basically which touches the entire end-to-end journey of a user's interaction with the product. And that includes, for example, identifying new opportunities for the product and business. I'll give a few examples soon. So what do I do like day to day? I will spend actually about half of my time creating things. And the fidelity would be different. Like if I'm early in the concept generation phase, I would just use paper and pen to sketch a lot of ideas out and like taking notes of the interactions. And then I would move on to like making wireframes in the design software. And then I would even like build some prototypes, connecting different things together. So everything will become interactive. And I would also, I think I don't have it here, but I would also bring everything to like the end result by having the final visual look, the same visuals you see on the app. And then the other half of my time, actually, I spend a lot of time in meetings, like talking to different people, like, for example, running some UX studies, presenting my idea, or collaborating, having design critiques, collaborating, pairing with my engineers, a lot of talking. So communication skill is important for a UX designer. But what is for sure is 100% time I will be thinking. I really like this job because it's a creative job. You will be thinking about things all the time, whether it's how to convince others that your idea is good or coming up with new ideas. There's just like a lot of creative thinking involved. And then I'm gonna skip this part, just like different use cases. You can see there are designers working on consumer products, enterprise products, different devices, phone, smartwatch, smart TV, or obviously desktop, web, everything. And then lastly, is UX designer a good career fit for me? I listed out a few things that I think if you feel like you can check a few marks on this list, maybe UX designer is a good choice for you. That you enjoy good design and aesthetics. You have a good eye to appreciate something is good. It doesn't even need to be a UI interface, you know, it could be just a product, a piece of furniture, a tree, something you appreciate, you know, oh, what is beautiful, what is good for you. And you don't need to be good at drawing necessarily. You don't need to be able to draw like an architecture or something to become a UX designer, because there are like a lot of assets already there in the library available for you. You need to be good at reasoning and critical thinking. You want to care about humans and your users. You're in general very curious about new products and experiences. When there's something new coming out, you want to be the first people to try them out. You're good at communication, like I said. You're creative because it's really important part of our job. And you're a little bit of perfectionist. You want to push for the pixels to be perfect. You have a keen eye of noticing if something is a little bit off. Okay, so sorry, I think I went over time a little bit, but now the floor is open. Let me know if you have any questions.
For the first one here is, how much coding do you actually do during your job?
0. It depends on the company, but what I can say is the larger the company is, the more specialized each role is. If you are like a UX designer at a startup with less than 10 people, you're probably responsible for like coding some of the front end. But for companies like Google, they don't really trust a designer to put in code into their code base. So I just do design, and they're like engineers who do the code.
Ooh, another question here is, do you ever have like limitations to what you can do? Because obviously there's like limitations with some things you can either code or develop. Are there ever limitations in your job?
That is a great question. It's basically all I do. Like, to be a designer, you need to be able to design within constraints. The constraints could be from the tight timeline, the implementation difficulty. It could be from what your users want, your particular user group. It could be from business. There are certain metrics you need to push. For example, you want to monetize your product, so you can't really make it. Sometimes it's against the user experience. So coming up with solutions that would kind of work around the constraints and understanding a very ambiguous space is a very important, I guess, thing to know, to have, quality to have as a good UX designer. I saw a question in the chat. What's the ratio of UX designer versus software engineers in your team? It depends, but normally there is a big difference. Like, I would say probably 1 to 5. So like each designer would be pairing with a team of 5 or even more engineers. So yeah, there are definitely not as many of us as the engineers. So are the PMs. So in a company, you would have a lot of engineers because coding things, implementing things are hard, and you have not that many PMs and not that many UXers, because mocking, like creating the visual mocks, and like scheduling, being on top of things, they don't need that many heads, that many people to do that.
All right, we have another question here. Do you have a favorite project?
Do I have a favorite project? Yeah, I can share. Like my most recently project is not even launched in Chrome yet, but it is. Yeah, did I say that I work at Chrome? Probably I didn't say. Okay, so for my 3 years at Google, I worked on Google Ads first, and then Google Shopping, and now for the last year and a half, I've been working on Chrome, the browser. Especially the mobile browser, and one of my project was making Chrome more joyful and delightful for delightful for users to use, especially like Gen Z users, young users like you guys, because you know, like a lot of people nowadays are on apps like Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat and such. Not a lot of people come to Chrome to get information from the open web anymore, and Google is just Google fears that we're gonna lose you guys in the future. So our idea is to make Chrome more fun, and I had to. This is like a really vague problem, right? A very ambiguous space, and I had to look across different services on Chrome and thinking how do I insert joy? Do I add like an Easter egg or like a more friendly empty page, or more sleek interaction, a loading bar that personalizes, depends on who you are. So I had a lot of fun designing that.
Okay, I have another
Any other
question
questions?
here. Yep. What was the most surprising thing about this job?
Most surprising thing. Oh, okay. I guess what I would say is that you don't, like, after you finish your program, your master's program, I thought I would be ready for my job. But what happened was, actually, when I already got my job offer from IBM, I had no clue what UX design really was. It just, you know, it's not like it's something less concrete as coding, right? For coding, if you know Java, if you know how to code something, there are ways to validate that. But UX design is more, I would say it's more vague. It's about like approach. It's about how you approach things, how you can apply different methods at the right timing, and how you would have that critical thinking. So it's really abstract. So after the master program, I didn't feel confident enough when, like even after the interview, I got my job, I didn't really know if I was gonna do well, but actually I did okay. And it's really a job that more experience, after years of experience, you're gonna learn from your work, and after you've, like, I guess, done a lot of different projects, and you've been collaborated with different people, different PMs, different stakeholders, you kind of became more and more confident about handling different situations, and your interview performance would become better and better as well over time.
Okay, I believe this is the last question unless someone has something in chat. On a typical like project base, how many days, or I should rather ask this, are there any like hard deadlines at Google that they give you?
Yeah, mostly, yeah, there are like bigger deadlines. So what happens is every year or even every quarter, before the quarter starts, we have a planning meeting. So we kind of know, oh, this quarter by March, we're gonna ship whatever features, and then it goes down from there, you know, and then each feature team, they're gonna be like, oh, okay, so by this milestone, like in 2 months, we're gonna have to do that. And then engineers will take 6 weeks to implement the code. So Shuang, as a UX designer, you need to have the design ready and approved by like in a month. So I have deadlines like that. But it wouldn't be like that harsh. Like it's not like at school, if you pass the due, you will lose the points or something. You would have some wiggle room because things could happen and you could explain, oh, actually, I need to think a little bit deeper here, give me a few more days. Or if I'm like busy with other projects, and very often I am working on not only one project, like different features with different teams at the same time. So it's totally okay if one feature I do need more time to work on it. It depends though on your product. So say for example, if you're working for Apple and for like a very important feature of the next iPhone release, and then there's definitely a lot of pressure there. You better make sure that your feature is good and running by the time they're about to demo. So for a very, very consumer-facing product with a few key like dates each year for release, if you're working on those products, you would have more stress when the days approaches. Eric asked, could you give the high school students some suggestions? Yeah, I know you guys are high schoolers, but can you be more specific? Like, what kind of suggestions are you looking for? Like how to prepare for a career like that, or just in general, like you don't know what to do, or more, I don't know. In general, okay. Okay. I think what I can say, because it's been a while ago since I was a high schooler. I'm feeling really old today talking with you all. Back in high school, okay, what I can share is life is about serendipity, really, a lot of times. Back in high school, like I said, all I wanted to do it was become a journalist. But later in college, I didn't get to what I wanted. I didn't study journalism, but actually I still had a dream in college for my first year, and I joined a few different student groups, and I became like a student journalist. And I soon realized that was not for me at all, because I'm a little shy when I talk to strangers, not aggressive at all, and I could imagine myself having a lot of problems approaching strangers, because as a journalist, I have to be really like go out and do a lot of things. Anyways, yeah, so But it turns out I had no idea I was gonna become a designer. I always liked sketching and drawing, but it was just like, you know, children's drawing level. And I didn't know I didn't want to become a software engineer, but I kind of just planned out things. So I guess my advice is don't stress out. It's nice to have a dream now, but you won't necessarily end up doing exactly what you think you're doing now. Not sure if it's helpful, but the general idea is don't stress out. You can dream big, you can dream different things. It'd be nice if things just become whatever you're imagine now, but if it's not necessarily a bad thing. I actually really enjoy where I am, the things I'm doing. Every day I wake up thinking about my work and feeling like pretty fulfilled. I got another question. How much math is needed for a high schooler to prepare for college education in your field? How much math is involved in my daily work? Second question, easier to answer, not much. At least not like college level, like calculus or algebra level kind of math, not at all. I was kind of good in high school and middle school with math. I just didn't like college level math. Yeah, so you just need to have that critical thinking, which I think is different than mathematics. And that's actually trainable. It's something you can learn, like the design thinking you can pick up after some training. So I wouldn't be very worried about that. It's more important as a UX designer to have empathy towards users than like having like such a smart head and like being able to calculate the numbers. No. And then for your first question, for a high schooler to prepare for college education in my field, I feel like I'm not able to answer that because I didn't experience the college entrance or the application kind of process here in the States. And also I'm not sure how things are like right now. So I would find someone who's actually maybe doing a bachelor like in interaction design or something at CMU or in Pittsburgh, someone you can reach out to give you a better answer there.
All right. Do we have we're running a little over here. Do we have any more questions?
Okay, last question. What do you miss the most of Pittsburgh? Everyday noodles. It's my favorite restaurant in Squirrel Hill. Cafe 33 is so good too. Yeah, I feel like Pittsburgh has a lot of good Chinese restaurants. Even in California, it's hard to find exactly like restaurants like that. Yeah.
All right, any more questions? All right, I believe that is all we have today. Big thanks to Ms. Lee again for speaking about her career. Thank you all again for joining and listening in. And unfortunately, we did have to reschedule, so thank you for making some more time out of your day. If that is it, I believe that is everything for today's event. So you guys are all free to leave now. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.